In this How They Did It podcast episode, we speak with the Head of Innovation Services at Allens, Liza Greenwood. Liza leads strategic transformation programs for lawyers at Allens, focusing on innovation skills development and creating behavioural shifts. They lead with the mindset of getting better at getting better. In what is an exciting time for law and innovation, we discuss the emergence of design thinking in the legal industry and new legal tech on the rise, including how they overcome time constraints, the lawyer mindset and perfectionist mentalities to curate a culture of innovation, the importance of capability building, including an inspiring story of how one junior lawyer taught a whole new group how to adopt design thinking as a methodology within law. We also talk about their concept of the innovation time bank, an organisational incentive to breed creativity and change the culture of time constraints. And finally, we also discuss some of the legal tech solutions that they're developing at Allens and how these concepts could apply to other industries. I really enjoyed this episode, some of Liza's really practical examples of how she is doing innovation, both within law and specifically at Allens, and we hope you do too. Liza Greenwood, welcome to the Naked Ambition podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. It is an exciting time in law and innovation. I think all round the last few years have seen the emergence and adoption of legal design. We've seen legal tech explode, new startups coming in. We're also seeing a greater focus on customer experience. We're really interested to understand, what has this meant for you, Liza, in your role as Head of Innovation Services at Allens?
Yeah, a few things, and you're right, there's really so many things you can do in this space, and really just an exciting time to be a lawyer coming into the industry. The things that I'm excited about, or I think the things that sort of differentiate Allens is around their investment in the people and the capability. So there's an acknowledgement there that yes, technology is part of innovation, but really focused on making sure we've got the right skills and capability in order to address client needs. And there's been a lot of work around that in the firm, in understanding client pain points and needs, and having processes and organisational structures in place to make sure that we're able to address client need and really provide an excellent service that goes above and beyond.
Tell us a bit about some of that capability building. What have you done there that's different maybe to some other organisations?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, we took a look at our operating model and how we're delivering legal tech and innovation to the firm, and where we landed, which is working great. I'm really happy with how we've distributed the capability. First, saying that there was quite a bit of investment and understanding at a leadership level that we needed the right people in the right roles and the right teams in order to support the organisation to be great at this. So the way we're structured in our formal innovation group is 3 teams. The group's called Innovation and Digital Solutions. One team, which is the longest running team, Integrated Legal Solutions. They work with lawyers on matters to help them use the right tech for the job. So they've really been providing that support, and it's been quite cutting edge in the technology we've invested in for over 20 years. But what changed was we created 2 new teams a couple of years ago. So there's the Legal Product Lab, and that's about 7 or 8 headcount. They work with legal teams, mostly squads, we'll get to them a little later down the track, but to identify solutions or identify problems, really design and co-create solutions, and then also help with adoption of solutions, because you can build all sorts of wonderful things, but you're not going to get the benefits and realize the impact unless you actually have people using tools. And finally, this is the one I love talking about because it's my team. We have a small team called the Innovation Centre, and we're really focused on behaviours and skills and making sure that we've got the organisational structures in place so that people can get involved in innovation, so they understand what it means in the context of legal practice, and so that they're a little bit more guided in terms of what they're looking for when we're talking about innovation solutions. It can be a very broad term that people don't necessarily understand unless you define it. So working really closely with practice groups to help them understand what it means, but also get involved in developing solutions and addressing client needs.
Smart. So a lot of readjustment or adjustment internally to get that strategy right, and a few different approaches needed for different types of innovation.
That's right.
Can we even go, I'm really interested as a starting point to understand how does Allens define innovation? How do you look at it in these different streams?
So it's quite broad. Change that adds value is our sort of tagline. We focus though on 3 specific areas. One is around partnering and collaboration. So that's ensuring that innovation doesn't happen in a silo. Beyond that formal structure that I described, we have a network, what we call an innovation network, which comprises of people in practice groups that are interested and want to get involved. We have innovation champion partners in each group, a partner advisory board that helps us allocate funding to development. All of our business partners, so marketing, pricing, knowledge experts that contribute to design and development and adoption of solutions. The second piece that we focus on is called practice transformation, and that's a real sweet spot for the Innovation Centre. So it's about, I think it's been described as getting better at getting better. So making sure that we're using best practice and we're using a process that works for the organisation to understand client need, design solutions and deliver to those solutions. And then finally, there's a recognition there that the last bucket is called profitable growth, and that's the recognition that we are a business. We all have limited capacity and time to get things done, so we do need to make sure that what we're developing not only improves the client experience and the lawyer experience, but also makes good business sense. So that's that viability, part of the innovation lenses coming in there, making sure that we again have processes in place that actually look at return on investment, make sure that we're focusing even our problem, our research on the right areas, that aligns with strategy, practice strategy, but also firm strategy, and that we're building things that people actually want to use, and there's a market for what we're developing and what we're putting out there.
Beautiful. We'll talk about the first bucket and the third bucket in a moment. I think we'll talk about some of the outcomes that you've been able to drive in those two. I want to talk about the second in a little bit more detail, that kind of transformation space that you spend a bit of time in. Yes. Naturally, quite a few challenges, I would imagine, given the work that you do. One of the biggest constraints that we typically see doing this sort of work in law is time. How are you overcoming those kinds of challenges as an organisation and yourself as a leader in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's acknowledged that any professional services organisation that records and bills time puts a lot of pressure on that as a production unit, and people can feel constantly busy. They truly are busy. There's client demand. We have spent quite a lot of time getting the right structure around helping people find the time. There's a couple of aspects to this. One is around the structure itself. So we have within the Innovation Network, a structure called Innovation Squads. These are self-selecting lawyers in each practice group. So there's 12 squads and of varying sizes depending on the headcount in each practice group. But across the board, there's about 170 people in the organisation who participate in squads. And they're tasked with identifying problems, helping us design solutions and implementing those solutions. Within that structure, there's a lead, a partner champion who helps us find capacity within that lawyer group. And, different practice groups are busy at different times, so we try and leverage free time when we can. And really it's about sort of guiding and supporting them to turn their mind to this activity. So we have a lot of enthusiasm. People really do want to get involved. They can see the benefit for the organisation. Who doesn't want to, you know, streamline a process or make services, you know, improve services for clients, but they struggle with the how and the what. So through the squad structure, we're able to create a fairly structured environment that gives them some, I would say, you know, mental space, mind space to turn their time to these activities, and do that in a fairly safe environment because you're with like-minded people. We've attached to each of these squads different subject matter experts, so IT knowledge, sometimes marketing, the lab, so a lab person plus an integrated legal solutions expert will all be present at squad meetings. They happen quarterly, and that means that they don't feel that they're, you know, going in blind and not getting a lot of support and guidance on how to innovate, but also what to focus on when we're talking about problems that can be solved by legal tech or by, you know, process improvement.
What are you really proud of that's come out of these innovation squads?
Good question. I think something that's happened recently that I really loved, it's not so much on the tech side. I've got lots of great, you know, tech solutions that I'm happy to talk to, but teaching and coaching people to collaborate and participate in a new way. So it's very easy to fall into the habit of, you know, somebody raises an idea, everybody else shoots it down, or, you know, a very one-to-many format for meetings. We've started using Miro, but you could really use any sort of whiteboard application, and a framework we've created called the Idea Pathway, which isn't a process, it's a conversation guide, and it helps squads direct their attention and sort of prime them for what they should be focusing on when they're looking for innovation problems, and then steps them through what the rest of that conversation should look like. So the framework together with Miro means that not only are they sort of talking about or thinking about the right areas that we want them to focus on, for squads, what we want them to look at is, you know, which matters have repeatable and predictable tasks that, you know, can potentially, you know, aren't the best use of their time, and they'd like, you know, there's tasks that are a bit manual and boring, not adding a lot of value, and we can potentially do something about. What are junior lawyers spending too much time on? So often in a law firm, because we get graduates every year, that model is not especially prone to innovation, because as a person doing a boring task, you're thinking, that's okay, I only have to do it for this year, and then next year, yeah, a grad will do it, the next grad will do it. So we love our junior lawyers, and we don't want them to be doing boring tasks, but also that's often a sweet spot for tasks that can really be improved and don't need to be done by anyone, because we can use technology there to augment the processes. Using the Idea Pathway together with you know, collaboration software like Miro, we're able to facilitate sections of squad meetings so that everybody feels like they're participating. We'll go through those questions, have some quiet time where everyone's adding to the board, do some voting with emojis so that we can work out where the energy is, and then move through the rest of the framework on the board as well. So we look at some root cause analysis. Why hasn't it been solved before? The scale, which is really important to have that conversation up front. We don't want to be focused on things that only affect a couple of people, you know, 2 times a year. So how many practice groups have the same issue? You know, how much time does it take? How many people are impacted? How often do we run that type of activity or task or matter? And then the all important, okay, who's going to take this forward? So part of empowering the squads to get involved in next steps is around having that conversation, who's putting their hand up to run with this, and which subject matter expert in the firm. It's not always someone from the innovation team, depending on the problem and the idea, are they going to work with on next steps. What I'm really proud about in that space is that people have started knocking on our door and saying, hey, I saw you use Miro in a meeting and I want to use it in another meeting I'm holding. Or I really liked the brainstorming technique, the brain writing technique that you used in a meeting, and I want to use it in another forum. So that means that people are getting value from the activities and they're enjoying them. I think they're really enjoying the participation part of it as well, and they're wanting to apply that to other parts of the business. It's like going in by stealth in some ways, and not trying to be too overt with forcing people to use innovation techniques and new ways of working, but just showing them, and then they'll see the value and want to use it themselves.
That is definitely one that you should be proud of. I think it's really interesting. It sounds like an adaptation of your kind of more traditional idea capturing software as well, where sometimes people put things into the ether and you don't know where it's gone or what's happened to it. But instead of actually getting people together to sort through this, getting a sense of what people are interested in, you're creating engagement, they're seeing it happen live, you're creating accountability with the partners and the owners and all of those sorts of things, as well as creating buy-in where people are more likely to kind of put up their hand to be part of progressing something like this. So
yeah,
it's unique and smart. Yeah.
They feel like they're participating and they're actually building it as they go. And I'm happy to share too, it's not foolproof. Some of the learnings from this process is that there are some squads that struggle to pick up where they left off at the next meeting, or continue to update each other on progress between meetings. Meetings are quarterly, so you don't want tools to be put down in between. And we're still working on how can we provide that continuity, and then when something is submitted to the innovation team as something to have formal discovery performed on it, how do they see it? How do we provide visibility of all of that? So we've got some internal systems that we're using. I don't think we've got it 100% right yet, but certainly it's something that we've got lots of feedback on, and we're working on making sure we've got that transparency. But the squad structure itself and the conversations that they're having are really, really valuable, and I think people are getting value out of participating, which is important.
So good. Are there any specific metrics that you are looking at in order to assess the success of it? Is it a bit of a numbers game in there as well, of how many things we're starting to see actually implemented? Are you starting to see more volume in terms of how successfully things are implemented, killing things, experiments? What are we looking at?
So on the squad structure itself, we measure engagement and participation and discuss that with the champions when we catch up with them quarterly. So we're looking for things like how many people are contributing to meetings, actually attending meetings, how many people are co-creating with us, how many people across the firm are spending time on innovation. We know that because we have a investment matter that people put their time to when they're contributing to those activities. On the solutions themselves, we're probably not as good at it as we'd like to be. So we've got a big project over the next 12 months to take a closer look at, for all of the legal tech solutions that we have in place in the business, so this will be more internal facing than client facing, what are the types of matters that each can apply to, then where are they actually being used on those candidate matters that they should be used on, and what's the shortfall? How can we put in place tracking systems to get a read on uptake, and then set targets for what that uptake should look like? So we have a rough idea, and it's a little bit more anecdotal. Sometimes we have systems in place to track uptake. So we have some good figures around. I would say it's a little bit more anecdotal, and we have specific data points. As an example, one of our key solutions for clients, Arrow Direct, we have figures on how much time and costs that's saved for clients. But I wouldn't say we have a across the board system of tracking adoption and uptake of the actual solutions, and that is going to be a really big focus over the next 12 months.
Beautiful. No, it's a great start. So tell me about some of these. We've spoken about time being one of the biggest constraints. When it comes to the innovation squads, so one of your babies, what were some of the biggest challenges in getting that uptake and even bringing them to life? And maybe even specifically around some of those mindsets. This is something you and I have spoken about a few times.
Yes.
How have you managed to overcome that some of the changes in mindset that was required?
So we did a bit of work on trying to understand what the barriers are broadly to transforming legal teams, and also a lot around spending time, but also any existing mindsets or existing organisational structures that's making it difficult for people to get involved and to take a different approach using a new way of working. And I sort of think of the barriers to this in three broad categories. One's around traditionally, maybe it's changing, but traditionally the lawyer mindset seems to sit in direct opposition to what we call an innovator's mindset. And that plays out in a few ways. So as an example, lawyers are typically quite autonomous. They sort of are in their offices and they like to take things away and work on them solo and get them, to almost perfect before anyone sees them there. So there's sort of two, can steer away from collaboration, and also that whole perfectionist approach sort of stands in direct opposition to what we think of as innovation mindsets, where it's collaborative, you get a lot of views, you get feedback on early prototypes, and involve people in the ideation stage and in the problem finding stage, not just in feedback on the final product. A second one is around time to innovate, and I've touched on that briefly. And the third one is we had feedback that people want to get involved, but they're not sure how, and they're not sure who to go to. So to me, that's around a feeling that there isn't enough skills and there isn't enough support within them and within their organisation to support them. So on the first one, on mindset, for me, what we've done is tackled the whole safe to fail issue. So a lot of the times they are willing to try things, but they're a little bit worried about how it's going to look when it goes wrong, or saying the wrong thing and getting shot down. It's a highly competitive, high performance culture. A lot of the people in it feel that they've been getting great grades and they've done a great job their whole life. So the idea of putting something out there and then having any criticism or being challenged is a real challenge for them. And in that instance, I think the squads, but also the training that we've run, the workshops that we've run, sometimes in tandem with Naked Ambition, have created that safe space to practice innovation without the stress of it then being presented to a partner or necessarily even linking back to real life. So sometimes it can really work to teach the skills almost in a vacuum, so that they're not too distracted by their day-to-day and the problems that exist in their real workplace, and just learn the skills, just learn the methods. I do find though that needs to be coupled with, and you need some really strong association then with what they do in real life. Otherwise they do walk out thinking, okay, well, what did that have to do with my life, and how does that apply to my job? You sort of have to really clearly articulate the connection to the real world. So we do those things together. And an example that I've run recently within our junior lawyer program is to share and teach design thinking as a method and as a model. But then all of the examples that we share are design thinking applied to legal practice, whether that be visual contracts or access to justice. And then within that same session, and we have to cram it all into an hour, also do some light discovery and start talking about, okay, what are the problems that you'd want to start solving, and getting people participating and activities happening and having a conversation around doing discovery. It does mean that we can't necessarily take people all the way through the process, but it gives them that space to try and play and use a different approach, and not feel too threatened by, necessarily having to apply it to their roles within that construct.
Yeah, so good. I want to stay on that too, because the question I've got is, do you think design thinking techniques make for better lawyers? We're talking about, while you think on that, that you're giving them this, rapid introduction to the main stages. So presumably the double diamond and the key mindsets across, what is design thinking, and then diving into discovery techniques like practicing a beginner's mindset, generating empathy, these sorts of things early on, embracing ambiguity. Have you got any specific stories, or are you seeing some of that even more anecdotally in some of that junior cohort and the way that they're approaching things? Is that starting to emerge?
I think so. To answer your first question, I can't think of any reason why design thinking wouldn't make better lawyers. And primarily because of the focus on the customer and the focus on the client and building empathy. And that's something that we encourage across the firm as part of our client experience program, regardless, but it fits in really nicely with, the starting point for what we want to focus on from an innovation perspective. Certainly, I think with the junior cohort, there's more openness to try new things. They've come from uni now with some of them with an understanding of project management and, little bit of innovation insights, but the concepts around putting the client first and design thinking broadly. So they're absolutely more open to trying the approaches. They do struggle, I think, when they then try and use them in say matter meetings or when they're trying to manage up. I do have a great story. This is an example, I think, of creating space for the mindset, even if it's not necessarily related to your core, purpose or your core work product. So I had a junior lawyer who attended, I think it was one of your workshops, Fiona, the 4-hour design thinking sort of start to end workshop that we ran here at Allens. And he moved to the Hanoi office and wanted to run an ideation workshop with the office there because he's keen, he loves the method and can see that it works. And as with all good innovation processes, we started with research in the office to see, what's a big problem for them. And what ended up coming back was they wanted to improve the connection between Hanoi as a satellite office and the Australian offices. Now, that's not really where the innovation team plays. That's something that, the HR or people in development team would normally tackle. But rather than, sort of hand him over to that group, I thought this is still a good example. This is still a great, opportunity to share the techniques with an office that I probably won't be able to reach face to face. So he was so great. He wanted to do all of the prep himself, and I only needed to give him a bit of guidance on how to structure the session. He had a partner do the introduction. He used ideation, so he came up with a problem statement. He led them through, understanding the problem and then doing some ideation. They used an effort versus impact poster. He sent me pictures back afterwards of everybody, collaborating and discussing the sticker notes and so on. So yeah, that was just a great example of someone picking up and running with the tools, being open to new ways of working, but also applying the mindset, applying the techniques to anywhere in the firm that needs them, rather than being too focused on legal process solution development, which is what the sweet spot is for our group. But I find that's a great way to have a ripple effect across the firm, because who knows who was sitting in that session in Hanoi who loved the techniques and have used them now in their method in their meetings with clients or in their office meetings. So that's a little story that I think illustrates the ripple effect that you can have.
And the kind of movement that you're creating, the fact that he felt empowered to be able to do that. You
Yes.
gave him the permission, and he just, as you said, he's run with it. And that's career
right.
making, and that's translatable to so many other things that he will begin to do in his career as well when it comes to client facing work. And it just goes on, doesn't it?
Exactly. And they have to try it first. So the workshops themselves and the training, as long as we really connect it to their jobs and their profession, I think that the penny drops and they're happy to use the skills. So the second barrier I mentioned was around not having enough time to innovate. And I'm sure it's a challenge that so many organisations face. You've got enthusiasm, but everybody has a day job, and unless you create time and make it easy for them to spend time, things come to a standstill and take a long time, and then people lose their enthusiasm and they don't feel like they're getting value out of participation. So I think what's important there is defining roles and actually dedicating roles, and there's lots of different ways to get dedicated capacity, even if you don't necessarily have headcount. The way, and this is really to support the people who are in the business who are trying to get involved in addition to their day job. I think there needs to be some dedicated capacity, and that can be really hard to get if you don't have budget and you don't have the mechanism to put in a business case and just get headcount. But we've used things like secondments from the practice group. So even someone who's been with us full time for 6 months has, once they've gotten up to speed, done such a great job at delivering important strategic priorities just because they're focused on that one thing. We've used interns and students who work a couple of days a week. They can often do some research for you on a particular competitor capability or an emerging trend that then gives you the business case to create the capacity and to create the headcount that you need. And then on top of that, I think with people that are volunteers, the people that have day jobs and they're just trying to get involved, they also need some structure around what their responsibilities and the expectations are. And this can feel like a stretch when you're setting it up, because you're thinking, well, they're volunteering their time. I don't want to be too directive about what we expect from them and what we want them to do with their time. But we actually found, especially with the squads, that when they were first set up, they were sort of left to their own devices a bit and not given too much instruction. And we had a round of feedback with them, and they felt that they're really floundering, that they don't know what we want from them. They don't know what they should be doing in meetings. They don't know what their outputs are, and just basically what they should be doing day to day as an innovation squad member. So we had created the squad leader role, which is someone who is a senior leader, but not quite at partner level, and they chair meetings, they come up with the agenda, they keep things on track and make sure that everyone knows what they're doing within the squad. Also, and this has been quite a successful role, the squad coordinator role, which is normally a junior lawyer in the squad, and they schedule the meetings and they circulate a draft agenda, they take down action items, make sure that things are recorded and so on. So for a junior lawyer, although one of the things they do is come up with great ideas, but it's a really tangible, real way to contribute to the operations of innovation within the firm. And so it's so important to have people understand what they're supposed to be doing, basically. Then when it comes to dedicating time to product development or solution development, one of the things that we found in our feedback from lawyers was that there was more or less a disincentive to dedicate time to help us design and create solutions, in that where they were putting or recording their time was counted as, in a law firm, it's called non-billable. And that means that it doesn't count towards their targets. It doesn't count towards their annual billable incentive targets. And it means that any time they spend, it's not that it's not looked at, but in all honesty, it might be 10 o'clock at night, they're deciding whether they should do a performance review, prep for a performance review, or a knowledge, precedent, or spend some time on innovation. And they're choosing between all of these other non-billable activities, and there's really nothing to push them over the line and say, work on the innovation, work on the solution. So we created something called the Innovation Time Bank. It went through several iterations of feedback. So we did paper prototyping with some lawyers and some champions, and worked out what was going to work from a firm perspective. And basically, we've now got a bucket of budget, or a bucket of money, that's provided by the practice groups. And when lawyers spend time on these specific priority products, so they're normally instructed by the product manager on what inputs needed, normally legal expertise, it counts towards their targets. It counts as I shouldn't be doing quotation marks, but it counts as quotation marks billable time.
Yeah,
not billable. Practice groups pay for it, and then lawyers aren't receiving a disincentive by spending time on these activities. That was quite a significant structural change. It was something that took a good 10 months to get through all of the checks and balances and get the okay from the practice groups and leadership teams and so on, that we could use budget in that way. But it's been broadly successful. I think we do need to spend a little bit more time encouraging people to use it. We haven't hit budget, and we'd like people to use it more. But I think the fact that it's there and in place in the organisation now is a demonstration of Alan's putting their money where their mouth is, and actually saying, yes, we value these contributions, and we're going to credit you from an incentive perspective for spending time on those activities.
Yeah. So smart, because it's just saying, like, it's like just any other strategic initiative in the firm. Just treat it like that, and that everything that you've just captured there, around, we've got to give people space to innovate, but space doesn't mean no structure. We still need directives around how we behave. It's not wild freedom. It's, to grab another quote from one of our previous, constraints breed creativity is something that we talk about as well.
Yes,
they need to be operating in something that is similar, or else it's just, especially when it's not your full day job, it's too difficult just to switch complete mode of working for that 20%. So it's something they don't have to think about. Give them that consistency. And also, as a firm, you're keeping the messaging really consistent around what you value in terms of how people spend their time. It's still a billable hour. We're not eradicating billable hours altogether. We have to work within this, and that's what we have to do. Yes. How do we mirror that, use that constraint to our advantage and carve out the time? Time bank, love it. Innovation time bank. That's your quotable quote, people.
That's good. So and the last one was really around skills and support. I think I've already touched on training, but we think it's really important to role model and to make sure that just-in-time coaching is available for everyone who's trying to get involved. So there's the formal training, but then when they're actually working with us on solutions, making sure that as a team we have the skills and are able to demonstrate the techniques so that they can, so that the skills are reiterated and the techniques are used again and again. So whether it be, discovery or, clearly defining a problem or prototyping and experimenting, that we're using that language. We're not dumbing it down, but actually applying it to real solutions and real design and development, so that they can see the techniques in practice, and again they're then more likely to apply them to their day-to-day job.
Nice. Speaking of real solutions, can we wrap up the chat with maybe you sharing a couple of the big challenges that you've managed to solve, new services that you're able to talk about? What has Alan's done in the last couple of years, even more broadly as a full innovation function that's now in the hands of clients?
Yes, happy to talk about it. So the big ticket items I think that are currently in clients' hands that I'm really proud of. One is, and this is, something that's taken maybe 3 years of iteration to get it exactly where we want it to be. But all along we've been delivering to clients in different versions and getting feedback and so on. So it's a product called Contract Assist. And basically, I'll start with the problem. We had auto financing clients who would need volumes of documents created around financing. So if you imagine, someone gets a car loan, there's a contract that goes with that, and the scale is quite large. And there's times when they need to brief out an external firm to have the work done because it's a bit more complex, but there's times when it's pretty simple and the business or the legal team themselves, the in-house legal team, can produce the contract because it's simple. So we created a platform in one of our automation platforms where they input answers to questions and complete certain variables. That then creates a contract for them automatically. If it's a simple version. If it's a more complex version, it creates the contract, but it also instructs Allens to review the contract. And we've actually found, this is a solution that can potentially be used in other, not just auto financing, but with other matter types and work types. And we've gotten great feedback from clients on that, in that they feel like they're empowered now to manage their own data set or contract set. It also means that as they're building contracts, all of the variables that they're inputting are going into a database or into the platform. They can find them. So it's become a bit of a contract management system as well. And they can draw insights from the variables that they're putting into those contracts. So one of the bugbears for lots of our clients is that contract information is static and I can't get anything valuable out of it. But because of the way they're creating the contracts, it's actually structured data and they can now do something with it. So we've had 3 instances of implementing that for clients, and each time we learn something, each time we improve the product, and we're at a point now where we think we can make the same kind of structure applicable to other sectors, not just auto finance. The second one I think I'll talk about is not so much tech related, but more a capability. What we found, so this is Arrow Direct, which is on our website, but clients will find.
We'll just start that one again if that's okay.
Arrow Direct.
So second one, yep.
Right.
Thanks, Sam.
So the second one I'm really proud of and would love to talk about is Arrow Direct. So what we found was our clients were, with the explosion of data, when they're trying to manage regulatory investigations, they tend to be overwhelmed with the amount of work that needs to be done, and they don't necessarily have the technology, so the machine learning technology or the internal capability to run investigations themselves. So typically a corporate legal team would brief that job out to a law firm, but what they were finding was, depending on the complexity or the risk of the investigation, there wasn't necessarily always budget to have law firm lawyers run with the entire matter. So what we did was we basically gave our clients access to our integrated legal solutions team, or our Arrow Direct Review Services team, so that they could run the matters themselves using the capability and the technology that we've been investing in 20 years. So typically it's Allens lawyers that get to use these teams and this capability, but now clients can access it directly, so they're running the matter themselves and just getting the benefit of all of our expertise and our years of investment in this technology. So that's an exciting one. It's a different way of working. There's a tech aspect to it, but basically it's just removing a barrier to accessing a particular service, and it's been really successful. We've had great feedback from clients, and we're excited about building out that service and that capability.
Yeah, that's such an interesting one as well, because you're capturing a value stream that potentially you might have turned away previously as well. They're the clients you wouldn't have had. It's almost adjacent uses in other professional services firms as well. It's just as applicable, isn't it?
Exactly. Absolutely.
You're just dealing in, 20 years worth of IP. How do we make it consumable? You kind of DIY, mine it yourself. Very clever. So good. Thank you so much, Liza. So many fantastic reflections in this whole conversation. I think this is going to be gold to a lot of people who are in this role starting out. I think there's a lot of learnings that are not just applicable to law, but what I really love about your attitude is this, we've done it our way. You've almost used this approach of let's listen to what our people need at Allens from innovation. Let's, get out there and experiment with some of these techniques. Let's iterate as we go. And you're starting to, after you've been at this for 4 or 5 years or something now, it's coming up, really starting to see some of that momentum and the runs on the board. So congratulations. It's fantastic to see.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to reach out and get some more information, very happy to be contacted.
Perfect. Where can people get in touch with you, Liza?
You can just email me at liza.greenwood@allens.com.au.
Perfect. We'll put that detail in the show notes as well. So if people are happy to hear or keen to hear a bit more, they can get in touch.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Naked Ambition podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did like what you heard, please do subscribe wherever you get your pods, or even better, leave us a rating and a comment. And of course, if you have any questions about anything we discussed, or you're keen to do something similar in your organisation, don't hesitate to get in touch with us here at Naked Ambition, or even drop me a line, Fiona Triarca, via a direct message on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.